All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming out on what actually turned out to be quite a nice evening. My name is Bill Price and I am the board president of the Community Design Rochester. This year's series began last month in February and we'll wrap up the series with a luncheon on June 17th. Tonight's topic is how education shapes our city and will be followed by how technology shapes our city and then how food shapes our city. Those will be in April and May, and then we'll have our luncheon in June that will try to wrap up all of these topics together and give you a sense of how these things act together in shaping our city. Before we start tonight, I'd like to offer this land acknowledgement that both the Community Design Rochester and the Memorial Art Gallery acknowledge the land that we are using tonight. I'd like to introduce our board. That's me up there too. And Miriam is here. Miriam, say hi to everybody. Miriam Jacob is an architect here in town. Stephanie Annunziata. Joel Barrett, a local real estate developer. Adam Bonoski is an architect in town. Stacy Waxton is an interior designer in town. Howard Decker is a longtime architect and longtime board member with the Design Center. Eugenio Marlin is with Ibero-American Development Corporation. And our newest board member is Betsy Brugg from Woods, Oviatt, Gilman Attorneys. I'd like to thank our staff. We are very, very fortunate to have a great staff to help out. Dawn Noto is here. She's our executive director. Sophie Redmond is here. She is our design manager. Ava Samara, I don't know if Ava's here tonight. She was going to be, and she is a U of R student in urban planning. And Purva Marashi is an architect with Labella Associates here in town. We do want to acknowledge the loss of our friend and longtime colleague, Jean Dupre. Jean died a few months back due to complications of a respiratory ailment, but Jean was with us for about 7 or 8 years and a longtime activist here in the Rochester area. We will miss him. Tonight's event is sponsored by Labella Associates. They're tonight's community sponsor, and we thank them very much for their contribution to this entire series. Our other community sponsors are the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, Capstone Real Estate Development, and the DeMarco Group. Our urban sponsors include Passero Associates, Architectura Architects, Stantec, M&M Development Advisors, Collier Design and Engineering, or Engineering and Design, Moxie Lighting, Greentopia, working with Lisa on the High Falls project, so keep track of that particular project, Marathon Engineering, Inex Architecture, Woods Oviatt Gilman, SWBR, Knopfshaw Attorneys, and Canandaigua National Bank. Thank you to all of them. Our neighborhood sponsors are Costich Engineering and Landscape Architecture, Sue Steele, Landscape Architecture, Buckingham Properties, as well as CNS Companies. Also want to thank all of these individuals who give during our annual Give campaign. We couldn't make this series happen without these individuals and families. We thank them. We also do receive some funding from the New York State Council on the Arts, and we do want to thank them for supporting this series for many, many years. Tonight's presentation, you are eligible for continuing ed credits if you're a licensed architect, landscape architect, or engineer. And if you did wish to receive credits for this, there are forms to be filled out at the end. That's a small, short survey, but you do need to do that, as you all know. I also want to thank the Memorial Art Gallery, not only for this space being available for us, but they have offered a complimentary family and grandparent membership as part of a raffle for tonight. So I think you all got a raffle ticket. We have them collected and we will draw that at the end. So I want to talk a little bit about the Design Center and why we are kind of passionate about this particular topic of education. We have, part of our mission has always been to engage students, no matter what age, in the process of neighborhood planning, community planning, and the things that we do. We go out and we work with the U of R's Urban Fellows program that is sponsored through their community engagement, their Center for Community Engagement. I've done several events with them last year, look forward to others coming up this year. Also work with Rochester Museum and Science Center's Curiosity Camp. These are 6 to 8 year olds that we work with in their architecture and engineering portion of the Curiosity Camp. So those are camps that last 1 week, and we go every week as the enrollment turns over to new kids. And on the right-hand side of the image, maybe you can or maybe you can't make out exactly what they made, but these kids are very creative as to what they would like to see built in the community. Another big, we do a lot of work with the RIT, and this year, which would have been last year, we did the Eureka project with them. It's a 2-day, 48-hour design workshop. Last year was on the topic of High Falls State Park, but that was all curriculum, all departments and programs at RIT were able to send students to that particular Eureka project. Also work with Alfred State, that's their Southern Tier Architecture Resource Center. And right now there are 2 studios at Alfred State that are working with us on designs for the El Camino neighborhood in the northeast quadrant of our city, which we are working on developing a modification to the current vision plan that they have. Let me introduce tonight's guests. We've chosen this year to go with a panel discussion of local experts. In the past, we would have traditionally invited a single expert from somewhere across the country, but we thought this year it would be very important to include experts on the topics that are here locally, know our community, know our students, and know exactly really how they're being taught and educated. I'd like to start with Sheldon Cox. Sheldon is the Director of Career and Technical Education with the Rochester City School District. Sheldon has been with the City School District for 24 years. He has a bachelor's degree from Keuka College. He has a master's in CTE, and I'm drawing a blank real bad on what CTE stands for, unless it's construction technology and, career technology, okay. That's from Oswego State, and a degree in education administration from the University of Rochester. Welcome, Sheldon. Antoine Williams is here. He's the guy in the light blue coat. He is with Rochester Works. Antoine is the Director of Youth System Services, responsible for the management of the youth services within their one-stop operating system. Antoine is responsible for developing and maintaining the comprehensive program plans, implementing and evaluating planned programs and outcomes within the youth system. Antoine is a driven and reliable youth services professional with 16 years experience in both direct and indirect service delivery. He is effective in working with underrepresented populations, providing training, support, and supervision to both school and out-of-school programs. Welcome, Mr. Williams. Barbara Burke is an architect with Labella Associates. She has over 10 years' experience in designing higher education facilities as well as campus master planning. She is currently serving as the education director for the American Institute of Architects, Rochester chapter. She also serves as the program director and vice president for the ACE mentor program of Rochester, a free after-school program for high school students interested in the fields of architecture, construction, and engineering. She is also a member of the education outreach programs at the Eugenio Maria de Hostas Charter School and Edison Tech. She's also the co-creator of Labella's internship program and a mentor for the Future Cities competition. Barb, welcome.
Thank you.
And Dr. Sean Nelms from the University of Rochester, where he is vice president for community partnerships. He is also the director for the Center of Urban Education Success, CUES for short, at the Warner School of Education. He leads the center's efforts to support the success of K-12 urban schools, both locally and nationally. He previously served as the superintendent of East, Upper, and Lower Schools. Dr. Nelms is the founder of Nelms Consulting Group and the author of Leading with Purpose, Empowering Others to Create Lasting Change, which, by the way, is available on Amazon. So, Dr. Nelms received both his master's and his doctorate from the University of Rochester. Dr. Nelms, welcome. Before I start asking a few questions, I just want to give you a little brief introduction to what this topic is intended to be about. Building a better future requires recognizing our children's and our young adults' perceptions of the built environment and actively engaging them in shaping cities that are inclusive, dynamic, and cater to the needs of all residents. Our children's perceptions of their neighborhoods, shaped by daily experiences, form the foundation of their understanding of the built environment and their role within it. Education, through design thinking and placemaking principles, empowers them to analyze surroundings, identify challenges, and propose solutions. By engaging students in the planning and design processes, their lived experiences inform decisions and help ensure new initiatives cater to their needs. By nurturing our youth's passion for their communities and guiding them toward careers in planning and design, educators can empower them to become the architects of their own neighborhoods and who shape vibrant and equitable cities. That is our hope tonight, to get at some of those topics and discuss how we can continue to make sure that the curriculum in the schools and the students know that they are a valuable part of building our community. So I think I'll start out, like every one of you, to answer, thank you, our first question, which would be, how do young people's daily experiences shape their views of their neighborhoods, and why is it critical to include their voice in city planning? You want to start?
I'm sure. Hi, everyone. I will start by saying that getting kids engaged in this experience tends to be a push. Within our district, we tend to believe that kids are not capable of giving great input and great resources and giving great suggestions to empowering the community and making the community better. But when we do find an opportunity to like connecting with Bella, for example, we have the internship with like ACE mentorship programs and other job shadowing experiences. Kids come up with some amazing ideas that just makes the community better. And so my job as a CT director is to empower students by providing as many experiences as possible. So I take that extremely importantly. So I try to provide as many work-based learning opportunities such as job shadowing, internship co-ops, and so on, that give students a voice at other like organizations such as Libellas or other architecture companies. And that's how I provide input on the community, especially in projects like F&P projects in our district. They can voice an opinion about what they think will make their school better.
Yes, I'll answer the question as a parent. I think, and think about my son who's a senior in high school. And I think he might define neighborhood a little differently than I would have as growing up. My neighborhood was definitely defined by geographic boundaries around my physical house. But when I speak to my son about his friend, his network of friends, they don't live anywhere near the home that he lives in. We're going to be at HFL tomorrow at a school play. And because one of his friends who's friends with on Instagram is in the same performance he's at in that particular district. So I think the way in which students define neighborhood and the access that that they're provided may make us think about how we define neighborhood in terms of our building and our neighborhoods differently. Meaning, are there spaces created in varying geographic spaces, areas, that allow kids to mix and mingle in very creative ways and authentic ways? Spaces that bring them together physically, but also sometimes virtually. And how do we open those spaces up so that we don't reinforce the neighborhood concept of you engage where you physically live into a world where kids typically engage in spaces that they're not physically located? And so I heard that question. I really thought about him, and often the children that he mentions are children who do not live within a 2-mile radius of our home. And so I think defining neighborhood loosely and differently might be worth a deeper discussion.
So I think, every student, every child has the right to feel safe within their neighborhood. Unfortunately, maybe not all do, but a child who does feel safe is much more likely to explore and play and feel comfortable interacting with others. If you take that a step further and your neighborhood's not only safe, but it's vibrant and there's access to parks and recreational facilities, developmentally that student will be at an advantage. They'll have physical activity, socialization, they'll develop different skills. So for sure your neighborhood is very important developmentally. And it's critical to include young people in city planning because they are a quarter of the population. So imagine doing any project and not including, a quarter of your end users' input. The project would feel very disconnected. So, always one thing to consider. But also children have wonderful input. I work with children directly collecting their input for school projects and library projects. They're full of amazing ideas, and if we put more effort into really studying how they interact with their communities, I'll give an example. So some effort has been put into children within the school environment, thinking about furniture design, classroom design. Chairs are amazing in schools these days, if you've seen them. The most common chair that we put in classrooms now can be sit in forward, sideways, backwards. There are swivel chairs. I just sat in one recently that has bumps all along the bottom of the seat, so students can fidget and release their energy and focus on what's happening in the classroom. So imagine if we put that sort of effort and focus into thinking about how children interact in their communities, the larger communities outside of their schools.
Young people are like sponges, right? They're taking in their environment, and when you talk about their neighborhood, of course they're going to see it through their lens, right? Because they lived it. They live in the neighborhood. They walk the neighborhood. They catch the bus. They play in the neighborhood, right? So when you talk about wanting to come in and bring about change, what better person to talk to but a young person if you're looking for, creativity, insight and someone who's forward thinking. Unlike us adults, we tend to think about the past, we're in the future, but young people, they are present. And so if we're going to, again, when we talk about, community design, and if we talk about like ownership, what better way for the young people to own their neighborhood than to have someone ask them for their opinion in terms of what needs to be brought into it for them to feel safe and to help them, in their developmental stages of life.
Great, thank you. So a couple of you mentioned, that, the value of engaging them on a couple different levels. But I think it's how can we do it? How can we engage children and youth in the discussions about their neighborhood or their city? Try to get at, what are effective mechanisms? Is it them coming to something like this? Is it us going to them and talking to them? Do we go to their environments and try to engage them? The question and the age-old question for people in kind of in our realm where we're trying to get people to come out and give us their ideas and engage in the process, it's very, very hard to do it. And it's hard to do it at any scale where we can get voices. So I guess I'm looking for any ideas on, how can we approach this topic of getting them involved?
Many years ago, and I say that many years ago, just before COVID, we had a project where we were buying furniture for the classroom. And we worked with a partner to, and this is my example, just bear with me for a second, okay? We were buying furniture, chairs, tables, seatings, and what we did, the vendor brought them all out to one of the schools, School of the Arts actually, and we bused kids from other schools who were part of this project to test out all the furniture. And they made comments on everything. We even had a 3D visualization of some of the rooms to kind of get kids to see what it looked like would be in the room with these furnitures. So we had high chairs, low chairs, swivel chairs, tiny chairs that makes you just kind of prop on the chair. And kids test them all out. And the feedback we got was amazing. And because of that feedback, we were able to make really great decisions about our furniture. One of the top things people like are the dry erase tables. And I know I'm talking about furniture and not about the architecture, but the same concept. I, working with an organization, can have kids come out who can give feedback, but they need to be in that space. They need to actually interact. They can't just see an open, if they see the open space, they can visualize what it will look like. But if we did a drawing, 2D drawing, blueprint, they don't really see it that well. So they just need to be engaged in that space. And with working with a school district, we can get kids to the site to engage and give you some feedback.
So going directly to to the location that we're working on, designing or planning. Dr. Knobs, are there any?
No, again, I think that those are great examples, and I remember you doing that project, and it was highly engaging, highly effective. I'm gonna go back to your first series that you had the media here, and Evan Dawson. I might totally mess up the stat, but he's something like he was saying that some folks were nervous about digital media. He says, but there's someone in Rochester, an influencer, who has 9 million views, right? And I heard him talking about that. I know there are clothing lines that hire youth throughout the entire country. They send them free clothes to wear as long as they post so many videos with them in their clothes for free. And so I would say that there's a trend of engaging youth already established, and that you hire youth to be the ambassador for what you are trying to, the message that you're trying to deliver or the work that you're trying to get across to them. And you find those youth that are known or popular or have a following in the community, and allow them to bring the people to you. And I think it does two things. One is it provides them some employment. Another, it values and validates their existence within this world. And, selfishly, you get all the information that you need from them that might influence a decision. And I think that you would have more than enough youth that would be willing to lead this, to spearhead this. And then it also opens up other careers and opportunities to them they may not know exist. It's not just the social media presence that you're going after. It's them engaging in a process about an industry that they may or may not know about. And so I think, doing those type of initiatives would be very fruitful. And what Sheldon said was an example of that. You put the children, so we're talking about furniture, you put the seat at the table, right? So that's my architectural joke. Was it a good one? No.
No, I love that idea, though, of the ambassadors. So you talk about creating inclusive cities. Inclusive cities start with inclusive input. And so within the ACE Mentor program, this year we have students representing 26 different high schools. And we intentionally, when we're making groups, we grab one student from each school and take them away from their friends, and they're initially upset. But it creates a richer spectrum of experiences within each team. So we'll have, one student from School Without Walls, one student from Pittsford, one student who's homeschooled, all of these different experiences that contribute to each of their projects. And, how can we engage youth? I think when it comes to the actual how in that moment, it's difficult to talk about architecture in the built environment with just words, because it's a very visual and experiential medium. So how do you communicate? So we've developed a practice with people of all ages, all of our clients really, where we do a visualization exercise. So we print out a bunch of images, all different styles, things we like, things we don't like, and we kind of break our clients into teams, and we let them sift through, and they can circle things they like, cross out things they don't like, they can associate words, they can say, I really love this natural light, this feels welcoming, and then they assemble a board, they can present it to each other, and we can create consensus that way because everyone is looking at the same thing. And amazingly, across all ages, all teams will arrive at a lot of the same conclusions that way.
When I think of community, I think of course, young people, but I also think of the older adults, right? I think of families. I think of people with disabilities. Folks who come from another area who migrate here, right? And when you look at those different segment of the population, everyone brings something to the table, and that being like a solution to whatever issue there is at hand. And so when you think of, and this is an example, the ramp off of the curve, right? Not only does that help a person who's in a wheelchair, but also helps a person who's riding their bike, or an elderly person who, may not be able to lift their leg up that high, right? So you fix one problem, you fix everything as a result of, working with a segment of the population. Okay, young people are no different. They come with lots of ideals and insight. And it's on us to, take them seriously and to embed their ideals into, community design or planning or whatnot. Back in 2011, some community partners came together, and at Rochester Works, we created this youth worker model. In essence, it speaks to two guiding principles, and the first one is youth voice. So we take it very serious that we're not here just to create program per se, and have them be a second thought, but to actually have them at the table helping us create programs so that we can better engage them.
Thank you. I think one of the things, Barb, you talked a lot about the activities when people are actually at an event or at some type of an engagement event. I think one of the things, Dr. Nelms offered, some of the newer ways of reaching them through social media, TikTok, influencers. We are aware of that, but as you can see, I'm not of the age that knows how to do that.
Nor am I.
It's not too late.
So yes, we do have some younger folks on our staff and interns that clearly know how to do that, and but it is the act of getting kids engaged and getting them to that event, getting them to know that the event is happening first, and then getting them to the event. Now, again, I could reverse that and say, well, the event has to go to them. But I think it's and how do we do it in a way that, I guess, is consistent. I'm looking for ideas on, reaching youth and whether that's reaching them through their parents or is through their teachers that, something that, the community wants your input on. How do we go about letting them know and actually getting them to that event? I don't know if you have any better ideas than the rest of us.
We've sure tried a lot of things. We've encountered, unfortunately, with mentoring, some students who are really excited, but due to, transportation issues or, situations where they have to work a job in the evenings and they simply don't have time to participate, or they have to watch their siblings because a parent is working multiple jobs. A lot of conditions like those where it's very, very difficult to capture those students without going to them, meeting them in their school, in their space. That's been my experience, but I'm interested to hear from the school's perspective how we might be able to help facilitate that better.
Well, as I think about it, this is a great learning experience. There's no reason why a part of the architecture class, 11th and 12th graders, or 10th, 11th, and 12th graders can't get on a bus. It has to be between 9:30 and 1 o'clock, but get on a bus and go to that site because we have a captured audience. This is going to be part of their learning. They need to take a look. They got to get feedback. So we can make it be part of a learning experience for the students, and that's where you get some, at least a small group of students. And I say small, we're talking about 20 to 30 students that's in our architecture program at Edison. We also have a design program at Wilson Commencement, Magnet High School, right, that has a design program that they can be involved as well, and they can be introduced to it as well. We have the DDP offered at that school. So there are a number of students in CTE-related programs that can just be part of the design process.
We have worked with Edison Tech and saw some success working with their architecture students.
I can connect you with other teachers at Wilson.
Okay, we'll chat later.
Well, just to add to that, so I think it's twofold. So of course, when we are able to, we meet the young people where they're at. So we go to the schools, right, or we go to their place of work or whatever. And if transportation is the issue, then we need to take a look at that barrier. And I think that it's not just working with the young people, but it's also bringing the parents along too. I think parent engagement is crucial because if you get the parent or guardian to understand the experience, the exposure and whatnot, they can then help and assist their young person in collaboration with the school and other partnering agencies that's providing, those wraparound resources.
Sheldon, I think in your first response, you talked a little bit about when students are ready to actively participate. When do they have that confidence to know that their voice would matter and that they have the confidence to speak up and contribute something? Does that depends on the student, or does that necessarily depend on the environment that they might be in or the people they're with before they would feel comfortable making a contribution to a community type project?
So any 2-year-old always has an opinion of some sort. We can start there, but we can. I think that to get feedback, I would recommend starting with the 5th through 12th graders. I think that, bear in mind that most students don't think about zoning rules or regulations or certain things that needs to happen. So your input will come without those kind of filters. Right, but you can start as soon as 5th grade, whereas kids are building things with toothpicks or tongue depressors. When we're starting to get kids to building and creating things, that's what I would start with, introducing them into this, to sharing their ideas. And they come up with some great ideas.
I didn't do it, but our staff went to work with the Museum and Science Center over the the last break, the last school break, and they were same thing, kind of a curiosity camp for that break, and went over and talked about architecture and engineering. And I think one of the students blurted out, something they were talking about, things going on in their neighborhood, and I think it was a 6 or an 8-year-old said, "Well, there's going to be rental housing at the end of my street." And it was like, how does a 6 or 8-year-old know about rental housing versus just housing? And I guess said it in a tone that was not positive. So it tells you that mom and dad are, talking about things around the kitchen table. And they do pick up on these things. So they do hear the news. They do hear current events and things that are going on. But it's when are they ready to kind of offer their own voice to this? And you're saying 5th to 12th grade.
Correct.
Yeah. Barb, did you have anything to?
I will add, we've worked
Yeah.
with kids as young as kindergarten age, collecting their feedback for school and library projects. And, not everything is, I want a library made out of candy. It's, they really want agency. I think, especially the young kids, they want to use the space in their own way. So, they're not all suffering from back pain like we are. They want to crawl into a little hole in the wall. So we literally, provided them with these padded, fun-shaped holes in the wall so they can sit upside down. They can pack, 5 of them in at a time. But it's not, it's not exclusively for them. They're proposing things that can be fun for people of any age.
We want to talk about, I don't know, in developing curriculum for the schools, higher education obviously has, degree programs in architecture or engineering, and it's not, not every school has it, but we're fortunate that locally here, we do have, quite a few schools that teach engineering and even things like construction technologies. But what is it that the professional side, professional organizations could contribute to curriculum development that would help both the workforce development, would help higher education, and would help K-12? Any thoughts on how the folks out in the profession can help?
I think we need to push into classrooms. I think that once you make or have kids be part of the process of designing and learning about the designing concepts, I'm asking for real world experiences. We can do simulations or make a project of a drawing of this or that, but when we ask kids to do some real things that they will eventually see in the community, imagine being an 11th grader and knowing that a project takes 5 years, so by the time they graduate college, they can say that I was a part of that project. I think having them be part of the creation, even in middle school, if possible, will be a way to get that.
Thank you. Dr. House?
Yeah, I would agree. And I just want to say to the group, Sheldon is an amazing ambassador for this work. I've worked with a lot of individuals in the city school district who led the career and technical education, and Sheldon is among the top of them. I mean, he's not only doing it from his office, he's in the schools, meeting with students, bringing in business partners, and I think that should be commended because it's not always, people in those seats don't always have the community-centered approach to this work. So I just want to take a moment to say that. I'm not an RCSD anymore, but I watched him work wonders across the district, and not just in select schools, but making sure that all kids in all schools had an opportunity, even if a set program or career path was not present. So I just want to just say that to you, and thank you for that. But to answer the question, I think, just going to further that and say, for any organization that is waiting for students to come to them, I could tell you it's the wrong approach. And even your last question, I was going to chime in, but I'll say it now. It's not always a matter of when students are ready, it's when the adults are ready to listen. And I think that's a different orientation because it implies that the system itself has to be prepared to hear their authentic voices, not from a performative standpoint where they're just going to hear it, write it down, and walk away, but there is follow through to say, because of your input, we made these changes, like the hole in the wall. Great example of voice to action. The kids are going to be more willing to give input 2 years from now because they're last time they did it, it had changed. Even if you don't use their advice in that particular situation, you tell them why. We're going to go with this idea this time, and here are some ways we could probably integrate your ideas in the future. Like, just that feedback loop is incredibly important. I'll give a few examples. At East High School, when I was a superintendent, for those who know the story, the graduation rate was 29%, and in the 8 years we got to 86%. And I would tell people that the vast majority of that work occurred because the teachers, the adults, and the system, the staff, the parents, and the kids collectively decided they were going to give this new model a try. They were going to pour their all into it, and they were going to take risks, and they were going to give their input. And we were going to bring business partners in to bolster the programs that were already present, but then also new ones we were going to build. Optimax, as a local company, came in and partnered with the Precision Optics classroom. We had local restaurants partnering with the culinary program. The University of Rochester Medical Center created a medical careers program. The different teaching colleges supported the TLI program. All those programs came to the school. And because of that, they created relationships with the students and the faculty. And then the students felt more comfortable going out into those other work environments. One of the huge issues that I saw early on in the East initiative is that a lot of companies wanted to say they were supporting our kids, but didn't do anything on the back end to prepare their companies or organizations to accept our kids. So our kids would come, they would have bad experiences. If the bus ran from school to work and they got there every day at 4:15, then don't hold the kid accountable for being there at 4 o'clock. They don't have another option. You have to adjust. And so the organizations that knew enough about the students to say, we're not going to penalize them for 15 minutes of time that they don't control, are the places where our kids thrived. And so the relationship has to be bidirectional. So the organizations have to come in and learn as much about the kids in the community as they can, as the kids have to learn as much as they can about the organization. And together is where the magic happens. And so what you're doing also, you have like 20 jobs, but all that you're doing and you're mentoring and supporting, I bet if I asked you to name 10 students, you can do it with your eyes closed. Because you know them intimately, you know the things that drive them, you know that this kid is not here because they have to work, so you don't penalize them for that. It's that type of authentic engagement and partnership that drive kids to be more open, more honest, more transparent about the things that drive the environment that they must thrive in. So I applaud you all for doing that. I'm not in the game as like I used to be a couple of years ago, though I get the itch to do it. But what you all are doing in real time is what should be happening in schools and what should be happening in our community. So I kind of just want to listen for the rest of the conversation because it's really you all that are doing the work. And I hope your fiance caught that on film because I keep seeing that camera go up. I hope he caught that. And that you are definitely doing the real work, all of you. And I think this is the answers to your question.
And just to add to that, thanks to some foundation dollars, Rochester Works, we're now in several of these schools providing career exploration to the juniors and seniors. I'm talking those who are overage, undercredited, may or may not graduate, right? Well, and one thing we recognize is that not everyone is going to go to college, right? And so to be able to meet them where they're at, I mean, there was discussion on the front end in terms of, okay, do we allow them to, go to school and then at the end catch a bus and come to us, or do we go to them? And so it was just a no-brainer for us to be embedded in the schools to provide these resources. We work very closely with Sheldon and whatnot, providing these opportunities. And thanks to some state dollars, we have dollars to pay to you. So it's one thing to want to expose them to these things, and it's another thing to say, hey, we're actually going to pay you for your expertise or for whatever, career pathway that you want to, take. So last year, $1.9 million for summer employment. And then thanks to some additional funds, I now have dollars to employ young people, throughout the school year, 3.9. So I have money. I just need, I just need the partners and employers to show up and be willing and able to provide a real world work experience for our young people. And just to piggyback, relationship is everything, right? To have a caring adult, see your potential, and then do something with whatever it is that they. Sometimes we see something and then we wait, or sometimes we do nothing, right? So when at the moment that you realize that someone has a unique gift or a talent, it is at that moment that you need to make that connection and to get the ball rolling in order to keep them engaged and see them through so that they too can become which is the ultimate goal, a productive citizen of society.
Thank you. Barb, I'd like to ask you, AIA, and I know some of the other professional societies, engineering, landscape architecture, APA for planners, we are constantly trying to promote the professions, right? The design professions. How do you think we can inspire young people to pursue these careers in urban planning, the design and engineering professions?
So I think a lot of people have never met an architect or an urban planner. Maybe they've never seen one in person or been able to ask them a question. So I'm a big proponent of, getting out to schools and just giving a talk. This is architecture. I'm an architect. You can ask me anything. And, I have some statistics that upset me, but minorities in architecture are just so underrepresented. So a lot of times, if a student hasn't seen someone that looks like them in a profession, maybe they don't think it's a viable option. Among licensed architects, 27% are women. 22% identify as a racial or ethnic minority. And would anyone like to guess the percentage of Black licensed architects?
2%.
It is 2%. So pretty abysmal. So yeah, I think especially prioritizing those communities because we really need diversity in architecture in order for that to be represented in the work that we do.
Interestingly, the Community Design Center, now Community Design Rochester, we started late 1990s, actually as a committee of the American Institute of Architects, and then became a separate 501c3 nonprofit in right around 2003, maybe a little earlier than that. But one of the reasons for even starting all of this back with Roger Brown and Johnny Monroe and Howard and Tim was because only 2% of the population ever has an opportunity to interact with an architect or an engineer. So I think if we talk about only 2% of the population, sitting face to face with an architect or an engineer, imagine how many people get to meet a woman architect, or how many get to meet a minority architect or engineer. So you can see pretty quickly that is, there's not going to be a lot of kids exposed to people that look like them that are these designers. And I think there was a statistic that actually the graduates of architecture school are 50% women, 50% male, right? But then 5 to 10 years later, it's only 27%, or I'm not sure, I thought it was 27% actually become licensed professionals. So something happens between graduation and the time of licensure. So But I guess it's, clearly we're all very interested in, our interest is in the general public, meeting architects, engineers, sitting down face to face, knowing how to take a blank piece of paper, come up with ideas, develop a program, and then start to sketch out, how does this become reality? And we'd like to teach them that process.
Well, I think one of the things that just from an education standpoint, a P12, pre-K to 12th grade, like students often respond well when they're trying to solve a problem. And so a way to orient students, regardless of what the community they're in, is to identify a problem and have them redesign it, especially a problem that illustrates when diverse thought is not present, that communities are harmed. So you think about the 33 Expressway in Buffalo, New York, and what that did to divide an entire community of individuals and created, by design, a situation in which 85% of people who identify as Black live in one part of town and everyone else lives in where all the sprawling Olmsted parks are. That was by design. The inner loop here, I mean, I think having children really think about how do these architectural decisions, because it was a thoughtful one, how do they have generational impacts on wealth, on health disparities, and then what is your responsibility? Could it be your responsibility as an architect to redefine that? Like students will, and communities will be much more attracted to solving those type of problems instead of saying, oh, we're gonna find out how to make this more, just a better green space. Now, I'm not saying just as minimizing that, but that may not have the same appeal to someone to say the green space is important because there were decisions in the past to tear down trees, which impacts oxygen. And so it has to be the connection between decisions that were made, the impact it has in your community, and then your ability to change that is where sometimes students, they get lost or they become disengaged. I think an effective classrooms, period, regardless of what school system you're in, if it's rural, urban, suburban, private, charter, doesn't matter. The teachers who are able to create the belief that a child has the ability to impact the final outcome are the classrooms where kids thrive. And I think if we look at neighborhoods and architecture as our big classroom, we have to continue to first identify the problem that we're trying to solve. So what questions are we asking? What problems are we trying to solve? And then how might these decisions empower individuals to solve those problems, if just not now, but also in the future? And I think that's really where the cognitive engagement of our students, our community, our communities come together and they merge. And I think that's where I think innovation happens. And then a child's ability to see themselves in that problem-solving center, as a professional or as a community member who may do it from a volunteer perspective. But I think we don't do a really good job of setting and defining the problem that we're trying to solve for our kids or for ourselves, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree that, we're not immune to, I don't know what it is, it becomes apathy at some point when some of these, we hear about these projects in town that are supposed to be transformative and, take our community to the next level with, activities and things for everybody, but they take so long. Things take so long. I mean, Barb, you'll go in and do a assessment of a school, and then you'll do design, and you'll do, some workshops on the programming and selection of details and furniture included. But what's that, like a 2-3 year process? And that's for something that might get built. Think about the projects that, they're a planning initiative. And someone says, we got to do a master plan. And then when we're done with our master plan, then we have to go through a zoning code rewrite. Talk about putting people to sleep. That'll do it.
Well, Bill, let me ask you, so I just quickly, so I was going to be quiet, obviously I can't be. But I think about going back to Parcel 5. I think we're all familiar with Parcel 5. If you recall when that was there, and it was, I think it was under the Lovelace administration, At one point, it was going to be arts. It was going to be what RBTL was going to be. Then it was going to be more housing. And then you had people saying it was going to be an open park space for people to walk dogs. And I just remember like getting bored with the conversation because no one was really talking about, the problem that we're trying to solve by having it as a green space. Just saying, oh, it should be a green space doesn't tell me what's going to happen there, right? Or we need to have another arts center there. You know, then the argument was, well, it's because somebody has money, wants to take over that space because it's prime real estate. We never had a community conversation about what we truly wanted to do with that space that would benefit master planning long term. Now, I'm certain people here are on all sides of how that should have been. But there's no doubt that when you're down there for Jazz Fest, when you're down there for concerts, when you see people walking their dogs, the way it's being used right now worked for whatever reason, right? It doesn't mean that if there was a building there, it would not have worked. But there was, even in that discussion, there wasn't someone driving, a collective group driving, saying, let's look at this master planning process through the lens of what our community needs in the next 10 years. It was a piece of land that everyone wanted because it was prime real estate downtown Rochester. And I think to the extent that the folks who are in decision-making roles, even in industry, get together where these critical opportunities are present and say, let's think about how we can collectively, across all industries, imagine this place with the community's input to benefit the city of Rochester or the county 10 years from now. If we don't start moving in a direction, then we're going to be repeating the same decisions we made as the Thruway in Buffalo, or the Inner Loop in Rochester, or you look at any major urban dwelling, where individuals are making decisions based on the problem that seems to exist now, not the solution they're trying to fix for the future. And that's why we're constantly in this constant cycle of redoing past mistakes, because we're not being thoughtful. And I think you all have the ability to do that because you're in this space to influence what happens next.
We need to clap for that, just so you know. Oh, I think we've all, we've noticed, parcel 5 is certainly an interesting example that, it went through, I think, several developer requests for proposals. Developers submit their ideas and, one was selected, then it was unselected, and then part of it was going to come back. But, what ends up happening is there was no transparency in that decision process. And it wasn't open to the public on, exactly how is that going to be programmed as a space? Is it going to be a dog park and, an event space? Or, there just was never that level of discussion. And I know we're wandering a bit off the education topic, sorry. Don't fall, don't fall. Yep, thank you. Oh, those are valuable questions. But, I guess it does get to the question, if there is a lack of, transparency, do we go ahead as a community and have that conversation anyway? Might have answered my own question, but go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about this, and that project is a good example. But I think that, at least for me, I know that, I have kids for a short period of time. So I can't get them involved in big, sexy projects. I need to get into smaller project that starts in September and ends in June. So I've been working in projects such as First Student is a garden there on First Street on 161st Street. And that Martin is the guy who runs a garden there. So I'm having the Edison students build brand new garden beds for all of his gardens and raise a little bit higher so that it's easy to access. We're dumping new dirt and we're building a new, Martin doesn't know this, so don't tell him. We're building a new stage. He has a stage back there. The stage is falling apart now. So I asked the teacher to have the kids design a stage for that room. And I asked for things such as lighting, LED lightings with solar powered, so there's no power getting to it. So I asked them to design a stage for it, and the best person who has the stage will get a prize. So I do projects like those where they're like a start and end. Students can see it, they can be part of it. So the Edison construction students, the architecture, the carpentry, the masonry, and the electrical are part of that project. So, and I think we need more projects like those. And there are tons of projects like those happening, right? Where there's like kids getting in September, finish the project in June, and they can see the project as they go through the entire school year.
Very nice, thanks. Antoine, I wanted to understand a little bit about some of the workforce training programs. You've got students that come to you, they've achieved some level of education before getting into a workforce program. Do you see these students understand how the role in their chosen profession can contribute to neighborhood development and community development? Or do you think they feel kind of divorced from, how their new trade is going to contribute to the neighborhood?
Good question. I, I want to say that it's, at the end of the day, it's all about relationship. So, we're fortunate that we have an out-of-school program called the Navigator Program. And it's a program designed to work with the 16 to 24 years old population. And the goal is to educate, train, connect individuals to opportunities after minimizing the barriers to such, right? And so, regardless of the barrier, we're trying to connect that young person to, short-term training that will allow them to become, self-sufficient. In terms of, their take on whether or not they feel that they are, connected to community or not, it varies, right? But through relationship and kind of working through how they are connected, is always our goal to connect them to other services beyond the Navigator services, because it's we don't have all the answers, right? And so this is where, we fund multiple agencies who can, step in and be a resource. So to name a few, we're working with Community Place of Greater Rochester, the Urban League organization, Center for Youth, Greentopia. And so depending on the needs of that individual, the connection is made for them to get the help needed to be self-sufficient, but at the same time, feel like they are part of society, given some of their backgrounds and barriers that, when they come into the door, that is preventing them from being successful.
I had a thought that, do you as educators believe that we, being architects, engineers, landscape architects, planners, nonprofit organizations, you mentioned Greentopia, there's the Genesee River Alliance, there's Landmark Society, a lot of organizations kind of in this space of the built environment. Do you see us doing a good enough job of helping you teach the kids their role in building communities? They could be studying a STEM program, they could be studying, a trade of. I got one here too. Yeah, so I guess it's,
You can be honest.
I've heard opportunities tonight that we could help, and I've heard several opportunities, in fact. But are we doing a good enough job? What can we do better ourselves in helping you?
Short answer is no. I think that a lot of times the connections I have is because of someone who works in an organization, who knows a teacher or who knows a director. It's kind of like direct connections. And I'm not asking for people to beat my door down to come and say, I want to be in your school. That's not what I'm thinking, that there isn't I should have a Rolodex of these organizations that I can call for work-based learning opportunities. I should be able to say, hey, I have the students ready. This is the right position for them, and I don't have that. Right now, I have some experiences, but so I need, and maybe it's just because I haven't created a system to collecting that information. Maybe I should be calling out and reaching out, right? But right now, I'm not getting enough communication from all those organizations you mentioned to me or to my schools directly to provide these opportunities for students.
That's what we wanted to know, is, if we are able to assemble a list of our organizations, our peer organizations, some of our professional, societies, and bring those to you and work actually with all three of you on, places where kids can go to learn, actually apply what they're learning. Unfortunately, some of it's in a office situation, some of it's could be outdoors and working on real projects. But at least we would all know who's out there, who's doing what are all the different organizations, even nonprofits tend not to know what each other are up to. And we're all kind of in the same space in some ways.
I will say there's none. There are a few organizations that have worked with our district, and we appreciate them. We've had a couple where they pick up students and take them. I'm drawing a blank of the company name right now. And they will take them in office, and then they will teach them some architecture and things. But I don't. It's not Labella. Was it Labella or was it Labella?
It was Labella.
Are you sure? Okay.
That's like, God.
Yeah. But Labella shouldn't be the only one. But it shouldn't be the only one. And these opportunities, and I say low stakes because, everything is vetted through someone else, right? So these low stake opportunities builds confidence. I remember when I was working in instructional technology before becoming director of CTE, I had a couple of kids working with me, and they helped me install smartboards. And we did that every night. And now some of the kids, someone that's graduating college, one student is working at an electrical company doing electrical work and doing really, really well. And because he had that confidence with working with me, you have to find the right partner. Some people aren't made for teaching others. You may be not being knowledgeable in the craft isn't enough, right? You have to understand the kids you're working with and what their needs are, not just, the information you need to present. But I think that we should provide way more opportunities for students.
I agree, and I'm so excited to be here today because thanks to a mutual friend, up until this point I didn't know nothing about community design, right? And so during the summer months, Rochester Works in partnership with the City of Rochester, we will employ roughly anywhere between 700 to 800 youth in a 6 to 8 week work experience. And we're always looking for ways to diversify the employment pool that we have in place. Off the top of my head, we don't have architect at the table, right? And so I'm excited to now be in partnership with you all so that moving forward, this could be something that can be, because like I said earlier, we have dollars, we just need employers. We need caring adults at the table who are willing to provide a safe space to, expose young people. I say exposure equals opportunity. And so you don't know what you don't know. And so, as a result of being here, I'm looking forward to moving forward that we can be in partnership.
Yeah, let's do.
Also very excited to meet all of you. I think there can be a lot of resource sharing among us. If I may take a moment to promote ACE, or at least describe this program, it is a wonderful opportunity for anyone in high school in the Rochester area. So ACE stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. It's a national program, but the Rochester affiliate is nationally known for being very robust. We offer several design build opportunities. Students can design a playhouse for a child, then build it. We then donate them to critically ill children in the community. This year we designed and built mini golf holes for Camp Good Days. They're working with design professionals from those fields. And we also do hands-on construction trades classes. So I mean, I never would have thought, when I was in high school that I could have the opportunity to learn welding and roofing and concrete forming and operate a bulldozer and safely. And we do take mentorship very seriously. So these mentors are involved through their higher education. They vouch for them when they're looking for jobs, letters of recommendation. I mean, these are mentors and relationships for life. And I now work with several of the students that I have mentored in the past. Just amazing. Sit next to one of them.
Nice.
So, yeah, opportunities, but of course, the hurdles of getting students there.
And I'll just say this, projecting out, I say a couple of decades, I think is important to solve now the problems of today and think about problems of tomorrow. I encourage you all to go to University of Rochester, Google University of Rochester Master Plan, and we are beginning our master planning process for what the university looks like over the next 30 years to 40 years or so. And that's been really interesting because, like yourself, I didn't know much about master planning until I got involved in this process. I've done planning at the school level, but that's like it's a confined box I was working in. This is like the university's footprint across the entire region, not just the city of Rochester, but down to the southern tier where hospital systems are. And I, for the first time, realized just how big the footprint of the university was or is, but also all the opportunities because they were built in chunks. So this was built here, and 20 years later, this was built there, and there wasn't a plan to connect it all. So we're at a point now where how do we connect all of the research opportunities? How do we connect the hospital care system? How do we connect teachers? I mean, students who have no interest in healthcare, but they might have interest in engineering, which has a footprint within the hospital system. And so this master planning process is doing exactly what we're discussing. And then the other part of this is how do we engage the community along the way? And so that's something that we haven't done historically as a university, is engage the community around the work that we're involved in. And so part of this process involves individuals to share their voices. So I encourage you to go on the website and share your thoughts. But as we develop these plans, we have a process for involving more and more community members. And perhaps I'll make the suggestion to bring some of these individuals here into that room because I think it's really important. And it's not for transactional purposes, meaning, people come in because they're looking for a contract. It's really, we want to come in because we want to make sure that we are representing the needs of our entire community. And looking at this huge map, these styrofoam blocks everywhere, and these digital maps that these amazing architects, Banish and Dumont Jenks, they do all the big colleges and stuff, universities. Like listening to them compare 40 different universities they've worked with and trying to overlay that on the University of Rochester's map. It's been really interesting because they're telling us how other folks have solved these problems decades ago. And so I think when we talk about urban planning and involving the community, that includes our youth, we have to, as a university, do a much better job of doing that too. So tonight's discussions really made me think about how do we take advantage of all of this great input and these suggestions in improving our own master planning process. But I do encourage you to take a look at the master planning. It's this landing page on our website.
It is an interesting process that you're going through. It's really kind of at the front end of it too, right? Yeah. I would like to open this up at this point to people with questions, except you. No. Dan,
Have you given thought to, gets back to everything you guys were talking about, engagement. Have you given thought to competition, like robotics at high school? Like having a competition, then you have parents, students, you go to the schools, you go, and then you start getting relationships. Start like maybe a competition if it builds a great chair or a great hole in the wall. Whatever that is, have you guys think about like making it a competition?
I have been working on enrichment in our district, and I even started working on developing a STEM sports, trying to pay the coaches as coaches, right? Because joining a robotics team, Lego team, all that takes a lot of time. But I've not thought about doing something related to architecture, but that's a great idea, and I'll start. But is there anything that exists out there already? Is there, like we have Skills USA, which is a competition for students. Is there anything like this, like that?
There's the Future Cities competition. So individual schools can create teams for that.
that was for the fifth and sixth grade.
Yes, yes.
And I would just love to add to that, DECA. I've been a part of an academic business club called DECA for the last 15 years. We just hosted 3,000 students here in Rochester at the beginning of March, and it's everything you have talked about tonight, that engagement piece, you know, taking what the students are learning in the classroom and giving them that opportunity to apply it, mentors, bringing in business. It's really encompasses everything. It is on the business side, not the design side, but we are always looking to grow, and these kids take these skills that they learn. And I always often tell our students, it doesn't even matter if you're not going into business. Those skills, thinking on your feet, effective communication, right? How to just presenting themselves. So it's just a great organization for a number of reasons that we've talked about tonight.
Is there a student-based organization for architecture? DECA is for business. There are other ones for.
So I mentioned future cities. That's urban design and architecture, but very forward thinking, as we've talked about, not addressing today's problems, thinking towards the future.
It is interesting. I don't believe, the American Association of Landscape Architects engages students in school, in college. They do have student chapters of American Society of Landscape Architecture. I'm sure American Society of Civil Engineers and APA are the same, but do they have a mechanism to get into K-12 before they're into their college and, early profession? Good question. There's, Mike is coming.
Mike is coming.
I don't know if I need a microphone. Hey, guys. Hello. So when you guys were talking about engagement earlier, I've been holding on to this the whole time, so I'm glad I'm able to get it out. Dr. Nelms was talking about how his kid doesn't think of his neighborhood as just the people physically around him. And when I think of like Zoomers and like little young kids, they're basically perpetually glued to devices. And I was thinking, the city's got funding. I mean, you have all these different organizations you guys are all part of. Can you spend some of that funding to pay the influencers in these kids' algorithms to get them to do things? Like, oh my God, there's a cool thing happening in Rochester, and you pay them like $50,000 to make like a TikTok. I feel like everyone's laughing, but like that's how these kids get their information. That's how they interact. So I don't know. That's just what I've been thinking this whole time.
So for me, no. I don't have that much money, number one. Number two, we can't, if they were part of a class, we can make it like a class project where they can do something like that. So I can embed it like in career and financial management or one of the business courses, absolutely. Or digital media course, we are putting a storytelling program at Wilson as well. But we can work through Rochester Works with the Navigator program and have an influencer job description, maybe. We can probably do that. It'll have to be after school. It can't be during school hours. But that gave me some good ideas, actually.
Well, for 50,000, you could have my son.
Thank you.
You want to hand the
Oh, thank you. So if 50% of the kids in Rochester are living below the poverty level, what you've described in terms of opportunities, and I think, Barbara, you had alluded to it before, if the kids are living in an not a stable living condition, how do they make room for what you're talking about to participate? And are the people who are participating with those kids, are they knowledgeable about, maybe they're not trauma informed, whatever, but are they knowledgeable of how maybe their reactions could be different than what they might expect when they get frustrated or whatever? So.
I think so. In my experience, we're working largely with volunteers, so we don't know necessarily what their experience with trauma is or what their response to it will be. For many mentoring programs, there is a training involved, so they can be sensitive at least to those concerns. So I think a big part of, we talked about inspiring kids, but it goes so much beyond that. You need really consistent mentorship. Mentorship is 90% just about being there and being a consistent presence in a child's life. And, after mentorship, scholarship. So the programs I'm involved with, like ACE, for instance, we're awarding $40,000 in scholarships next Friday. The AIA Rochester has a scholarship program. They're awarding $30,000 in scholarships. For a lot of these kids, a future like this isn't possible without that. So I think, those are the steps that we're currently taking. I'm sure we can, do more.
No, great. I just want to add, I think it's a really good question, and it reminded me to say this. I don't think what you're asking is what can you do outside of, what can you do separately? Like how can we combine with things that are already happening? And so we know that there are areas in the city, areas in the county, areas in the region where students do have a place where they feel comfortable engaging. The YMCA shifted its entire program to bring different resources to different neighborhoods within the community where they knew kids were. So I think it's the Maplewood Y where they have added much more digital technology because the students said they wanted to do more gaming in that space. The Boys and Girls Club has a history of being a place where kids feel they can engage in different ways, and not just through sports. And so part of this connective work between what you want to do should include an audit, or at least understanding where the kids currently are, and then trying to make sure that it's not a new initiative. It's in coordination with. I'll give you an example where this is happening right now. The sheriff's department is thinking about how to focus on an area in the city. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. It's being recorded as well. How to focus on an area of the city where they can perhaps engage children in thinking about being having a career in law enforcement. And Baxter said, we're not going to do something that's outside of the community's input. Like, where are the community members now? Where are the kids now? Let's go there. Let's start where the kids are, as opposed to creating another table and another space for them to get to. And so as we think about areas that do really well, understanding how to deal with children who are in communities that are not robust, where they already have the support, let's bolster that. That's why schools are so important, because they have the paid staff to do this work already. They have a fixed bell schedule, although it's a little archaic in times, but they have a time where kids are guaranteed to be there 7 to 7.5 hours in a day. So then to what extent do we bring these resources and opportunities where the kids are, but then also extending it into the evening? And this is what you're doing and what you're doing. And so it made me think of that I think all the questions that we're asking, or at least the way I'm thinking about them, is not creating a separate initiative, but how do you take advantage of what exists and make it better, and reimagining that. And I think that's the same type of design thinking we're trying to create for our students and our children.
You mean like where trust is available already? Yeah.
And if I can just add to that, because I feel like we're such a deficit-based society where we tend to spend so much focus on the thing that's not working for that young person. So let me give you an example. I come from a single-parent household. It was my father who raised me. I had a learning disability, so I went through the special education system. So labeled and had, some things that could have been a roadblock to my success. But as a result of some caring adults in my life, they were responsible for connecting me to resources that will allow me to not use my deficit for an excuse not to succeed. My catchphrase saying is exposure equals opportunity. And so 6 months before graduating from high school, from Addison Tech, my resource teacher said to me, "Hey, Antoine, what about college?" And I said, "What about it?" And I was scared because not only would I be the first one to graduate from high school, but I'll be the first in my family to go to college. And so it was that same weekend that she picked me up and took me to Nazareth College and introduced me to the HOP program. And once I was in that space, after meeting with the students, having lunch, taking a tour, so forth and so on, I knew that I was good enough to pursue it. And the rest is history. Now, she could have said, here's a flyer. You have an opportunity, check it out. And 9 times out of 10, young people don't do that. But it was something about that connectivity. It was something about, in that moment, I saw that she saw in me some potential. And then fast forward, now I'm in a position where, I have all this lived experience, and now I'm working with that same population. So to your point, as it relates to, okay, low income, okay, so that's a barrier for a lot of young people that enter into our system. But I kid you not, that thing we don't focus on. We focus on, where is the skill set, where is the passion, and then we couple that with, some resources, but more importantly, a caring adult. Because if you can walk with someone who sees your potential, once you reach the heart of an individual, the rest is history. So we're all about, exposing young people to that thing that they are not aware of. Because once they become aware of, yes, they have the resources, they have the backing of folks behind them to help them succeed. I kid you not, the rest is history.
All right, I would like to thank all of our speakers tonight and really appreciate your time and coming out to share your thoughts on how education can shape our city. Thank you very much.